Everyone is going to jail these days. It doesn't matter which side you pick. If you open your mouth, you're on the hook for something, and eventually you're going to jail. You might think I've lost the plot, and maybe I have. Maybe it's the rabies. But give me 2 minutes of your time and I'll show you two stories which will illustrate perfectly just how insane Britain has become. Okay, let's start with this one. You may have heard of a Northern Irish rap group called Kneecap. Well, I'm sorry if you have heard of them because they're absolutely terrible. But one of their lead singers was recently arrested and charged under the Terrorism Act. Why? Because at a gig he was seen wearing a Hezbollah flag and clearly indicating his support for prescribed terror groups. Now, despite the fact that it's a live court case, the BBC has shared this footage and it's widely available. So I'm going to show it to you. Okay, clearly that's not very classy, but at least now we know where we stand on the topic of Hezbollah with the British state. Supporting Hezbollah is bad, and therefore presumably being opposed to Hezbollah, well, that's a good thing. But not quite. You see, a man was arrested in London for holding up an anti-Hezbollah placard. He was subsequently charged by the CPS, and somehow, I don't really understand, we even have the interview footage when he was taken in. Take a look at this.
Do you think that showing this image to persons protesting who are clearly pro-Hezbollah and anti-Israel, that by doing so would stir up racial hatred further than it is already been?
Are you saying that there were people there who were pro-Hezbollah?
That's what I'm asking. Were there? Is that image...
Well, you've suggested that there were, by your question, that there were people who were pro-Hezbollah. So are you saying that there were pro-Hezbollah people there because it's a prescribed terrorist organisation?
Brilliant. So what's the takeaway here? The takeaway is that there is literally no side that you can pick that will not result in the British police arresting you and the CPS charging you. And that's quite surprising because I thought that we had always had a long and proud history of free speech in Britain.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time.
Yeah, not quite, Keir. Let me give you one more example. Right now, you can be arrested in the UK for being opposed to Israel in their war with Gaza.
That is anti-Semitic for you to even imply that Jews support this Holocaust which is happening as we speak in Gaza.
It's the truth. At the moment, it is 1:51 in the afternoon. I'm arresting you on sexual.
Okay, so this time we definitely know where we stand on the topic of Israel with the British state. Supporting Israel good, opposing Israel bad. And so when this gentleman goes to London and stands up and says, Am Yisrael Chai, which loosely translates to the people of Israel live, presumably the police won't arrest him, right?
Louis, they're arresting me.
People who've been watching my channel for a while now know that I tend not to talk about foreign or overseas issues. And the reason for that is really simple. We have enough of our own problems in Britain. But I chose these examples because they highlight something very clearly. In none of those examples were people inciting violence or anything like that. They were just a bit offensive. And that's the problem. That's why our free speech is rapidly being curtailed, because there is nothing you can say in British society today that will not offend at least someone. Why is that? Well, the honest answer is because of multiculturalism. Because every group in the world is now represented in some form in Britain. So no matter what you say, you will offend them. You will risk being offensive. And apparently for the British police today, that is enough for you to be arrested. And for the CPS, that is enough for you to be charged. That's where multiculturalism and liberalism has led us. And it's a really, really big problem. That's why your free speech is being curtailed. But you know what? Half the time, you don't even have to say anything to get in trouble.
Can your actions be carried out elsewhere?
I'm not doing any actions. I'm just simply thinking silently in my head.
Okay, and why have you chosen this location to stand?
This is an abortion centre. I'm praying for those who've been hurt by abortion.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to issue a fixed penalty notice now.
So what am I being issued a fixed penalty notice for?
Because I believe, and my colleague believes, that you're here to protest.
I've just told you I'm not protesting, I'm simply silently praying.
Depending on what your beliefs are, you might not like the idea that someone could be standing silently praying outside of an abortion clinic, but personally, I don't really see a problem with it. If your commitment to the abortion is so weak that you are rattled by someone merely standing near the clinic, perhaps you should go and take a little bit more time to think about whether this is the thing you really want to do. It's a very big decision, and I don't understand why the British state is determined to push you through those doors. But hey, and I do understand, by the way, I'm sympathetic to the fact that there are different circumstances. Sometimes women and girls have been abused. I get that. But do not try and tell me that the British state cares about women and girls who've been abused when they won't even launch a national inquiry into the grooming gangs. I just don't believe it. Now, all of this palaver has resulted in the United States, our strongest ally, sending envoys to the UK on a fact-finding mission to determine whether or not we have any free speech at all. How embarrassing is that?
President Donald Trump sent US officials to the UK on a fact-finding mission after becoming so concerned with the erosion of free speech in Britain. A team from the US State Department spent days in the country and interviewed pro-life campaigners to feed back to the White House. The 5-person team met with 5 activists who had been arrested in the UK for silently protesting outside abortion clinics across Britain. The visit in March is the latest sign of the Trump administration's willingness to intervene in domestic British affairs. Of course, it was only yesterday that the president voiced concern on social media about Britain's march towards net zero. Well, I'm afraid to admit the ugly truth tonight that there is no such thing as free speech in the UK. Politicians can talk all they want about protecting freedom of expression, but the truth is they're lying. Whether they're lying through ignorance or something more sinister, they're lying nonetheless, because free speech does not exist if there are consequences to it. That kind of environment stifles creative thought out of fear of being cancelled or, worse, as we've seen in this country, imprisoned. And the visit of American Conservative star Charlie Kirk to England this week reminded me of this. I spoke to him about Lucy Connolly, who we all know now as the mother and childminder who was banged up by the state for a solitary tweet during the Southport massacre that saw her given a 2.5-year sentence. As a reminder, this is what Charlie Kirk said about Lucy's situation.
Try to get the US State Department involved. I don't know if you know what their bandwidth is here, but I'm sorry, again, I'm speaking as a citizen, not as a U.S. government. I just want to be very clear. Is this a way that a liberal democracy and an ally of the United States acts? Just to be clear, what she said would not be any prison time in America. I don't like what she said, but she showed contrition.
Of course, he's right. We don't have free speech in the UK, but in America they do, and it's constitutionally protected. I envy the Americans for that. And look, I am a free speech maximalist, and I understand the consequences of that belief. Other people will be permitted to say things that I disagree with, or that I find distasteful, or even morally repugnant. And yet I would still prefer to live in a society like that, rather than one where the state can intervene, lock you up, persecute you for saying something that you truly believe in. That's wrong, and it's open to widespread abuse by the government. We don't need that. What we need is some kind of free speech law in the UK, which really does mirror what the Americans have. It's really that simple. Look, coming back to the grooming gangs, in Rotherham, the police did not report what they knew was happening because they were worried about being called racist. That's what happens when you do not have free speech protected in your country. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will realise that I'm back in Zeljava because why not? It's like Croatia's Chernobyl, and there's always more to explore here. Plus, there's lots of shade, you can stay out of the midday sun, and it's quite easy to film here. Not too many people come to this part, so I can just sort of wander around and talk to the camera. But I was in Zadar, and then I was in Pag Island until very recently, and I do have some clips of that. So I thought, you know, I'll include them for those who are curious to see a little bit more about Croatia and sort of what I'm getting up to on my travels. Enjoy or click off, up to you. What's this? This must have been some kind of projector room. It's kind of cool, isn't it? Like I said, always more to explore in Zeljava. You just have to avoid the landmines. Anyway, Zadar, let's go. A rather dramatic change of scenery because I'm now in Zadar, a Croatian city on the coast, and many people recommended that I come to Zadar because it's much better than Zagreb. But most cities are better than Zagreb, if I'm being completely honest. This is Zadar. We'll go and take a look around. There's some very lovely Croatian women who are doing my laundry at the moment, not for free obviously, they are being paid. Yeah, we'll just take a look at the city. It's a beautiful old city. It's funny, there's so many Chinese tourists here, and I don't know why they bother going anywhere, because whenever I walk past them, they're not actually looking at the things, they're looking at their phone screen and like videoing the things constantly, all the time. And at that point, if you're going to experience the place that you're in via your phone screen, why not just watch a YouTube video about it? But that's just the world according to me, I suppose. I guess all of this behind me is like old Roman ruins. And you've got to think the Romans made it all the way to Romania, hence it being called Romania. So I presume these are all old Roman ruins, but I can't find any like placards in English or anything. I did also get a comment on one of my last videos, which was interesting. It was a guy who said, if you come to Zadar, you'll find me in the old town, which this is, playing the guitar with a black dog. So I'm going to see if I can find that guy, and if I do, we'll say hello. I don't know if he'll want to be on camera or not, and I have no idea where in the old town he could actually be, but we'll figure it out. So over my shoulder, that's the old town, and that's where we just were. I was looking for the guy playing the guitar. I couldn't find anyone matching that description. I couldn't find anyone playing the guitar, so unfortunately that's not going to happen, which is a shame because it would have been cool. But I also needed one of these, a micro SD to SD adapter. So I went to an electronics shop here in Zadar and I explained to the guy what I needed, and he said, look, we don't sell those separately, you'd have to buy a micro SD, so it would have been like 30 euros or something. But then he just went in the back and pulled one out and gave it to me for free. So yeah, pretty cool, what a win. Croatian people are really nice. In fact, everyone in the Balkans is pretty nice and pretty chilled, or at least everyone that I've met. And it's kind of really hard to imagine that just 30 years ago, these people were fighting a brutal war against each other, because everyone's so nice, friendly, calm and relaxed. Anyway, look at this. It gives me Monaco vibes. Not quite as wealthy, but also a lot bigger than Monaco, but Monaco vibes. Just some huge yachts in the background. It's kind of cool, right? I like this place. I like it a lot. I think for now, I'm going to go get a pizza, sit, look at the waves lashing in, and just relax for a couple of hours. Got to wait for my laundry anyway. So this is Pag Island on a very windy day. And I wanted to come here because it's unlike anywhere else in Croatia. In fact, it's unlike anywhere else in most of Europe, to be completely frank. It's just rocks. Everywhere you look is just rocks, rocks, rocks. It's been described as being like you're on the moon or you're on Mars or something like that. And I can definitely get those kinds of vibes. In fact, if you watch The Day of the Jackal, and if you haven't, then you should go and watch it. It's an excellent TV series. The filming location for Afghanistan, where Eddie Redmayne was a sniper in the parachute regiment, well, that was here on Pag Island. Now, this might not be the perfect representation of that, but actually, if you find certain spots on the island, sometimes a little bit difficult to park and walk, it's just sandy and rocks, and it's the perfect shooting location for it. There's also a fort, which I'm going to go and find in a second, and apparently there is a family of cats that live there. So I've got some cat treats, and we can hand those out and become, I don't know, king of the cats, I guess. We'll see what happens. Hopefully they don't have rabies, but it's okay if they do, because so do I. Well, over my shoulder you can see the fort, or at least the remnants of one. There's no easy way to get inside, which is a shame, and I don't want to risk going for a swim because the weather's particularly bad today, or at least windy, and I don't think I would last very long in the waters. I'll show you, look, we're on an island. Well, we're on an archipelago series of islands. Anyway, no cats as far as I can tell, which is false advertising, because on Google Maps, it literally says cat family. And there's a picture of a whole bunch of cats and people feeding them here. And I've got a real habit whenever I come to the Balkans of feeding stray animals. You don't really find too many in Croatia, but in Bosnia, well, especially in Bosnia, and even in Serbia, you will find a lot of stray dogs. And they are looked after, they get looked after by vet charities and things like that. But I just take them a bit of extra food because why not? I love dogs. So there you go. That's your fort. Unfortunately, I can't get inside. I will go up. I'll take a little panoramic shot so you can see it. But yeah, that's it. No cats. If you made it this far, all the way to the end, then I am extremely grateful. It's only because of people like you that I am actually able to have a voice and to go and do cool things like this and see interesting places. So thank you very, very much. And do leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in a future video. Till the next one.